Oh, it's
Welcome to St. Augustine this evening, the Mike Davis Show, where all of us older people are having a lot of fun trying to figure out how to work devices that were meant for young people.
boomer moment.
Grandpa Troy, welcome to the show.
Thanks. You catch me while you usually talk for like 5 minutes.
Yes.
And you catch me right in the middle of a drink.
Well, we're not doing ad reads today because we have a very special guest, and we want to dedicate all the time in the show to them. Yeah. But before we get to introducing the guest, you and I have a couple of political interviews this week. Mm-hmm. Want to kind of air out one thing. I want to apologize to both of the people that are coming in. Normally, we would do these interviews individually, drop them at the same time. Yep. Your schedule and my schedule would not allow that. I feel a little bit bad about that, but I also I got a call from a very good friend of this person that's running, who I could not say no to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and it's to me the most important race that we have to do. I'm friends with both candidates.
Yeah,
you know, and I'm talking friends for a long, so I can call them both my old friends. Mm-hmm. Not that they're old, but we've been friends a long time.
So. Yes.
So I'm excited to talk to both of these guys.
And for complete transparency, these are both sheriff candidates that we'll have in tonight. Jim Priester's with us tonight. Rob Hardwick will be with us tomorrow night. So that everyone knows, and I will announce this tomorrow night, I have donated to Rob. So I don't want somebody to go look and feel like I have done something without telling you. So just the quite honest person that I try to be.
Yep. And, Jim, like I told Jim before the show, I probably would have stayed out of the race, but Jim, I'd already committed to Rob. Jim is a good man, so I know whoever wins this race, we're in good hands either way.
Well, I don't know if he realizes how much you wanted to do this interview with him. So I was like, I'm coming to do the interview, which we're very grateful for. All right. Yeah. So now that you all know our guest tonight, and Amanda, welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody.
All right. Is Jim Priester, a candidate for St. Johns County Sheriff. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate you sitting in. You can thank Ramona because we have done very few interviews.
I understand.
And she was instrumental in getting you here. Basically, it was a text message, when can Jim come on? So I don't think people understand. You don't tell Ramona no.
You don't. Yeah. She is an awesome person.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely wonderful, wonderful person. So you're running for sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Tell us why you're running for sheriff, how long you've been involved in law enforcement. I mean, give us that kind of introductory speech, because there are people that are watching now that don't know who you are. And one of the unfortunate things today with the demise of newspapers is no one can get information on.
We have lost our local voice in St. Johns County. And I'm Jim Priester. I'm a fourth generation law enforcement officer. I have served at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office since 1996. I started as a part-time deputy where Sheriff Perry said, hey, come and show me you want to be a deputy here. And then once you finish your training, I'll give you a job. And I went full-time in 1997. I've served in a lot of capacities throughout the 27 years I was there. I was on specialty teams, which was my pride and joy. I mean, I kind of equate it to high school, where your deputy job is like you go into high school and being a good student, and then your extracurricular activities like your football and everything was like the SWAT team and the dive team and the bomb squad and all of the things I belonged to. So it was those extracurriculars that, kind of shows that how involved you are at the sheriff's office. So throughout my career, I finished my bachelor's degree at Flagler College, and I did the master's program with Webster University in leadership and management. And the last 11 years, I finished in leadership, and retired in January in order to run for sheriff. And I wanted to run for sheriff because I think that we have some challenges in our sheriff's office that I have better ideas than I think we're accomplishing now. And of course, I'm not here to talk bad about the person of Rob Hardwick. I just think that the job that's being completed right now we're not hitting the mark. And that's why I'm running for sheriff.
All right. Now, and you brought up, high school and stuff like that. And one of the things we have on our list is school safety. And, today was, just
first day
of school. How do you feel handling school safety and some of those items you might be able to make St. Johns County a little safer?
Well, I served as a youth resource deputy. I served in multiple capacities for our youth, and I know PAL is one of your questions. I'll save that for later. But While I was in school resource, I was at Gamble. I was at Gaines when it was still on Gaines Road. I was at Pedro for a little bit. So I took it very seriously, and having that knowledge of being a youth resource deputy, I'm able to see the inside, and then now helping to plan for the future. I think I have a better perspective to help plan
when you
for
were
it.
at Gaines, were you with Abba or were you with Tyrone?
I was with Mr. Ramsey.
There you go.
It's not Tyrone, it's Mr. Ramsey, because he taught me in middle school in Palatka. So it's Mr. Ramsey.
There's no feared teacher more than Mr.
It's Mr. Ramsey.
I'll call him Mr. Ramsey in this scenario. Luckily, I met him with Tyrone.
Yeah.
I'll trade you a retiring nun at St. Joe for Mr. Ramsey all day long.
I can tell you this: the nuns would blush and run. I'm telling you.
Mr. Ramsey is a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah,
and I just saw him the other day at
he still looks the same.
He is. He's the same.
So
he's
still
a great
looks the
man.
Same. And you touched on it a little bit, but you and I met through the PAL program.
Yes, when you were on the board of directors, I went to PAL because on my 3rd anniversary with the sheriff's office, actually on the west side of St. Augustine, I was actually investigating when you throw something in a house. It's called throwing a deadly missile into an occupied house, and it hit the window and hurt a bunch of people inside. We found the suspect, and then we had to take him into custody. Well, of course, he didn't want to go into custody, and me and another deputy ended up fighting with him, trying to get him into custody. And in the process, I tore all the ligaments around my right ankle and ended up in a cast for about, I think it was almost 4 months. And during that time, I had just transferred to the community-oriented policing section of the sheriff's office. And because I couldn't be in uniform for those months, they put me in PAL. So that's when I got to interact with the explorers. That's when I started the golf program, and that turned into First Tee of St. Johns County. That now the fire station is being built on that site. And the explorers, I mean, we have 6 deputies right now that are high-ranking deputies at the sheriff's office that were explorers with me. And I mean, it's just that's a testament of that just makes you warm and fuzzy all over, because being a role model to them, those folks, and see them grow up to become something successful, and know you had a small part in their lives. That's what it's all about with our youth.
Yeah, one of the questions we have too is what do you think of the current budget for the sheriff's office? And how would you address that? Is it too much money, not enough money? What's your just thoughts?
We have some financial challenges coming up, and if you have been keeping up with the surrounding counties, JSO has their union has just gotten them a 23% pay raise, and this is I'm getting this from our FOP, and over the next 3 years they're going to get a 23% pay raise, and they're also going to be transitioning to the Florida retirement system, which is the same retirement system our deputies are on here. And if we don't get our pay up and in competitive and competition with them, we're going to lose deputies, because they can go up there, because if they get a 23% pay raise, they can go up there walking in the door with 10, 15, maybe even $20,000 pay raise just by walking in the door up there. So we have to do a lot of tightening our belt here. And that's why I've been preaching about some of the spending that we're doing. It's reckless right now, because we need to be planning for the future. And this helicopter is one of the things that I've been talking about so much, is because we're going to be paying $1 million a year for the next 7 years. And that's going to severely impact our budget. And then when we go over and talk to the county commission and say, hey, we need some more money, that's going to, we already got to pay that $1 million, so we're going to have to increase more. And then when you start increasing all of the budget or all of the deputies' pay, that's going to exponentially raise our budget. And of course, we want to keep taxes as low as possible. But when you start talking about public safety and us enjoying what we have here in St. Johns County, public safety is the major component of that. So that's why the budget is going to be the biggest challenge.
How many deputies are in the sheriff's department right now?
I think we're just over 500 sworn, but almost 1,000 total employees right now.
Okay.
Yeah. I did a tour of the facility out at out past 95 out there.
Mm-hmm.
At that facility, I'm assuming that's on some type of bond, but that is a high tech facility. Is there something that we're missing out there, or is it at the level where it needs to be? I mean, that facility to me, I was very impressed by it. I mean, I'm used to the old
Gaines Road,
the old call center at Gaines Road and everything else, and what's happening out there was just very impressive to me.
The facility is great. I don't think we're utilizing it in its full capacity. And I spent 8 years in our training unit when I was at the sheriff's office, for all the way from just a deputy, just as a trainer, to the corporal in training, and I was promoted to sergeant from our training unit, and helping prepare the budget. That's one of the largest budgets in the sheriff's office, because you have the ammo and the tasers and the guns, and you're preparing all of the training where, Troy, if you wanted to go to a class that required you to travel, all of that money is under the training unit. Mm-hmm. So preparing that budget is a pretty significant part of the overall budget. And I just don't think we're using it to its full capacity, because there was a time, and I don't know if since I've been gone, I've been gone since January, since I've retired. Before I left, and since 2021, the beginning of 2021, patrol deputies have not been run through our simulator out there. And that's an $80,000+ simulator with the 10-foot screens. It's almost set up like your background here, 10-foot screens where you have a 270-degree view, and the person running you through the scenarios is the more you interact with it, the better the training is going to be. And they can change it based on what you do. If you have a habit of always going for your taser, then they can change the scenario to where the taser is not applicable, to show you that you shouldn't always go for your taser, to train you to not always go for your taser. Well, we haven't had patrol deputies go through that since 2021. And that's a major problem. And that is decision based, and running through deputies like that. And we actually did, before we had the simulator, we did scenarios, and I was the one that came up with a lot of those of, hey, here's the scenario. It's always winnable, but go do it. And here it is, go. And show them how to react. And we had role players and everything, but to try to get them used to being in those live situations. So our driving track out there is really not, the facilities at Gaines Road we did outgrow, but the driving track at Gaines Road was probably the best driving track we could have had. It had a skid pad. It had the roads where you could actually chase somebody. What we have out there is, it's not big enough. It doesn't have the all of the components that you need to really effectively train them to drive. Now, right now we have 8 open lawsuits for deputies getting in crashes. Now, deputies are going to get in crashes because they drive a lot. It's going to happen. But the problem is, we haven't had any driver training since 2021. And when you don't mitigate the possibility of crashes, the lawsuits are going to come in, and that's more money that we're paying out that we shouldn't be paying out. That's going to affect the budget.
Yeah, at Gaines Road, I remember it was who was our driver instructor? I mean,
John Donlin. I guarantee
Mike,
you.
let me tell you this. I drove through as fast as I could through the thing, and in our like leadership St. John's, and I was fastest one in our class out of about 12. All right, John gets in the car, does it backwards, and beats my time by like 5 seconds. 100% backwards, and he had me in the car with him, and I was going, I don't even know how he's doing it. And he's like, I would go faster, but the car shuts off at 65 miles an hour.
Yeah,
most impressive driver I've ever seen in my life. I've worked with race car drivers, and I'll tell you, this is the most impressive driving I've ever seen.
He was in a very bad crash when he was a younger deputy, and he has honed that skill. I mean, a deer ran out in front of him. It wasn't because he was a bad driver. A deer ran out in front of him, locked his wheel where he couldn't steer, and he flipped over and ended up with gas in his eyes and tangled up in electric wires. So, I mean, it was pretty bad up on Racetrack Road, I think it was. But he has honed his skill, and if you think he can drive a car good, you ought to see him on a motorcycle.
I can only imagine. I'm telling you, it was the most impressive thing.
Can I put you on the back of the motorcycle going backwards?
No, I don't do that. But I mean, I know the training that was being given. So you're saying you think since 21, some of those things have fallen off.
Yes, we need to train our deputies better. I know we do train them. I think we just need to train them a little better.
Next question is kind of a what if question, right? So we don't know, and this kind of what if is, Troy and I are always looking at the economy, and the economy has been kind of hanging on. And I'm in the construction industry. We're always looking for the next downturn.
Mm-hmm.
But if we had an economic downturn with kind of the stresses and pressures you talked about earlier on wages, do you have a plan for that? Have you thought about that? Is there something?
I have. One of the things that I would like to implement is when we hire deputies, Sheriff Shore actually had the 457A plan to where you could have a deferred comp plan. Mm-hmm. And then he had a financial planner come in and you could join that and have some actual guidance through financial planning. But, most deputies don't have money to plan with. Mm-hmm. I want someone to help them manage what they make. Mm-hmm. And if they can manage what they make, hopefully they will be better off economically. Now, as far as the overall agency goes, if they're able to manage their money, I think they'll be better off individually. But as far as the sheriff's office goes, I saw the example that Sheriff Shore did in 2008. There was one thing about our agency is we didn't lay anybody off and we didn't have to cut pay. And the way he did it is he saw that it was coming. And there was a guy that was his kind of a mentor and a very good friend and a friend of mine now that said, hey, you need to watch this. This is happening, and gave him a heads up. It's like, you need to start planning for this now. And what he did is as people retired and as people either left the agency or were terminated or whatever the separation cause was, he left the position open. And when the county commission called and said, hey, we need some money back, he was able to give them, I think it was 20 or 30 positions back that he had open, said, here you go. And then he basically said, hey, we need to do a little bit more with less for now because to keep your pay the same and not lay anybody off, this is what we have to do.
Well, and the thing that got Troy will attest this, and you've been in government a long time, you guys are behind the curve both ways. Mm-hmm. So when it slows down, your ad valorem taxes are still there for a year or two, but then when it picks back up, everybody recovers out of it before the ad valorem taxes catch up a couple of years later. Yep. So you kind of got that both sides of it where you're trying to, hey, we need the money now, but we're not going to give you any money back until 2 or 3 years after things get good.
One of the things internally that I would like to implement is workforce meetings. Mm-hmm. And I want to do it at 3 different levels, where it's the line level, the supervisor level, and the manager level, because each level has a different perspective. And the 2 things I would ask in those meetings is bring me something that could improve a process at the sheriff's office or something that could save us money. And something I mentioned this, I think it was on Facebook. I was responding to a comment about turning their vehicles off more, because some of them will go in and, they get tied up, not necessarily that they're going in to eat dinner or whatever and leaving their car going, but they'll go in and get busy doing something and forget that their car is running. And you walk by and, hey, how long has your car been running? And something as simple as, hey, turn your car off. How much is almost like, hey, if we cut this much, it's like almost like a little Debbie cake. If you make it just a little bit smaller, if you sell 1 million Debbie cakes, you're going to save a lot of money. So if you just save a little bit of gas in a lot of cars, you're going to save some money. So that was just one idea I had. Somebody actually said something about the computer equipment in the car. Hey, we need to watch out for the temperature in it. And, I hadn't thought about that. My thinking is their car's not going to be turned off long enough to build heat up in there to worry about that. But I appreciate it. I told the person on Facebook that I appreciate him telling me I didn't think about that. Of course, we would check with IT before we implemented something like that. But those ideas are something, hey, they're out there doing the job. Is it easy for them to implement? I don't want to make it harder for them to do their job by trying to save the money if it's going to make it harder on them. We want something that keeps them efficient, but still tries to save us money. So those are the things we're going to try to implement.
All right. One of the important things to me is mental illness. And you guys, when you're on the street, you've seen some really, really bad things, and the help that happens, because a lot of these police officers are taking this home with them and creating some tough home environments and things like that, which ends up sometimes, good people have a bad day. And, so how would you address that with law enforcement that we can improve? I know we have some things in place, but how can we make that better for the people that are protecting us?
Well, I tell you, it starts with a better relationship with our county commissioners, because Chairwoman Sarah Arnold worked really close with the fire union and was able to get them $500,000 for better mental health programs for the fire union and our firefighters, which they desperately need, because they go through things just like us. And if we had a better relationship with our county commissioners, we could have done that too. And I think it starts with that, to be able to get that funding to get the programs in for our deputies. So I think that's where it starts. You
want to ask your question that you're dying to ask about PAL?
I kind of got it in there.
Yeah.
I kind of got it in there already.
I don't want.
But I mean, the PAL has grown so much since you and I
it has.
were in there in the mid '90s. You know, and I tell some stories about it, and they're like, "Oh, come on, you guys didn't start." No, we had nothing. But where it's at right now, and they have a new facility that's going out at where Nice Road, out there at the old dump. But how do you think that importance, and where can you improve that? Because you've been a part of it. Where can you improve that?
Well, I tell you, I have concerns about it being out at the dump. I know there is an investigation going on about some dirt that was hauled out there. And I've talked to several people that you actually used to work at Parks and Rec, and there's a concern about the depth. And Mike, you may be able to speak to this, about the depth of how are you going to build something when you have a 2-foot barrier on that garbage that you can't break? And I don't know how you would anchor things. Like I think they tried to plant some trees in the BMX bike area, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing with those trees?" Like, "Hey, we're fixing to plant them right there." It's like, don't even stick a shovel in the ground, because you'll break that EPA barrier and we'll be in trouble. So when you start talking about building out there, I just don't know. I would have to see the plans, and I didn't understand how they did it. But I think the investigation was this dirt was moved out there, and I'm not sure what the investigation is. I just know there is one. And I would like to know more about it. Sheldon York has done, I mean, he brought that PAL program, I mean, single-handedly. I think he was out there for 7 years, worked 6 days a week for 7 years. And his leadership, his organizational skills were phenomenal to get that program where it was. And I know the guys out there now, I think Kermit's out there, Jared Goodman. I don't even know all the people out there, because it's been so long since I've been out there. But I tell you, they do so much with so little. They need so many. I mean, I'd love to be able to put 12 deputies out there, because it's so important to get deputies and kids in the same area to where they're interacting. Because some of my favorite times were out there when we got to go and do things with them, and taking those kids. It was a 10 and under team, baseball team, down to West Brevard, and I'm talking about beat bad. I think they did a 10-run rule on them, I think in the 3rd inning. It was bad. But those kids, as soon as I said we're going to get pizza, they didn't care what the score was. They were ready to get pizza. And that was just priceless to see their faces. They were bummed out because they got beat. But as soon as we said pizza, they were like, on to the next thing. We're going to get pizza. And just to see them have fun out there, they were bummed about the score, but it was time for pizza. It was time for pizza. Just to see those kids have just a great time out there, that's what it's all about with PAL.
Well, I think you guys I've kidded with Troy a lot, because he started shortly after Coach Cox had retired. And there was probably only about 6 or 7 people in the entire rec department at the time. And I blame him for the growth of government in St. Johns County, because the rec department
entirely
is huge now. His fault.
Entirely my fault.
Entirely his fault. But no, the PAL program, rec department, have come a long, long, long way.
Yes.
And it's amazing how many kids you guys have helped through that. Because I'm one of those believers that if kids are busy, they're not getting in trouble. If they're not busy and they don't have something important to them like sports, trouble kind of finds them.
Yeah. I mean, when I started the PAL golf program, as Mike Dillion, I mean, he did so much to start the program. I mean, when he went over there at the old abandoned Station 14 and very first time cleaned out all of the paraphernalia and everything else and in that abandoned building, and it became the PAL building. I mean, it was a tremendous job that he did getting the PAL building started. And then it was out there. It was me and Tony Coleman. I mean, it was a great time. But when I started the PAL Golf, he wanted me to start a golf program. So I did. I went to Hastings. I went over to the Y, and I actually got Dave Griffin down at Hester's Flooring. He gave me some of the little carpet samples, and we put them in the gym at the Y over at the beach so they could play chipping the wiffle balls and into the net down there. And that's how they got to play golf. And I mean, those were the little kids down there. So, I mean, we had over 100 kids participating in that program. And then when First Tee came in and set up their shop and built their 3 holes out there, we were able to transition those kids right in there, plug and play, and made St. Johns County, the First Tee of St. Johns County instantly successful. So it was a great day.
All right. You mentioned Mike DeLeon.
Yeah.
Now Mike DeLeon, I don't know if you know the history of Mike DeLeon. He was probably in the early 90s. I was able to get a hold of the National PAL, and then Mike moved into town, and his son played baseball for me, and he was like, all he wanted to do was focus on PAL, and he ended up being the director of all PAL,
National PAL,
National PAL in the United States, and it came out of the program that you helped build. Yep. So, well, one of the other things that's on here, we talked a little bit about salaries. What's the current salary right now? And you said they got 20. What is that gap? I mean, is there a gap?
I don't know what Jacksonville's starting is, but I know our starting, I think it's 56 now.
Okay.
It just went to 56 is my last understanding. I don't know if it's been approved yet. I know that when the sheriff gave his budget proposal, it was $10.5 million. I think he had to go back and ask for more to try to get more money for salaries. I guess he miscalculated or whatever, but he had to go back and ask for more money to boost that salary up because he didn't ask enough to give a big enough bump. So he was trying to fix that. So I don't really know. I haven't been told what that official. I haven't seen it posted anywhere.
And my argument is that beginning salary is very important, but keeping and retaining employees has more to do with environment than a lot of times than it does. I mean, salary is always a factor, but it has to do with the respect you're getting from them and communicating with them. What would your administration do differently than the current administration to make the environment better? So if we can't get there with the salaries, they're not going to go anywhere. Well,
one of the things is the benefits. You know, when I was there, one of the things and how it was presented was, you know, we got you this money. We got you these raises. You should be happy. And when you present it like that, that's not how you present it. You need to frame it the right way. And it just wasn't framed the right way. And it was basically offensive to the deputies because, you know, the deputies would, hey, LT, why'd they have to say it like that? Or why they talk to us like that? And those are the conversations that I had when somebody above me had a conversation with them. And it just on one of the monthly teams meetings that he has, the video team meetings that he has, he mentioned how much money the health insurance costs the agency. That is something that if the agency is going to pay it, the employees shouldn't have to worry about it. Don't tell me how much it costs. I shouldn't share that with you because if I'm going to cover it, it doesn't matter how much it costs. I'm going to cover it. But when you have to look, you're costing me $1 million a year in health care. Why do you have to say it like that? So all I'm saying is if the health care is an issue, how about we go to the insurance committee meetings, which I don't think the sheriff has been to one. How about we go there and help negotiate that down? Those are the things that I could change. If we can negotiate that down, then maybe we can make more for the salaries. But you know what? They deserve more. So it's not that I got you this raise, you should be happy. It's like, hey, I got you this much. I wish it could be more.
So what, along those lines, what would you like to see the starting salary be for a St. Johns County deputy?
I would like it in the upper 60s. That's where I'd like it to be.
And then what are we, I know, do you have any idea what we're competing against in Duval, Clay, Putnam?
Well, I know Putnam, their tax base, it's not that we're going to be competing with Putnam. I think we're going to be competing with Duval. And with their, I'm not sure exactly what their starting salary is, but I know just talking with our FOP president and it being 23% over. They make more than us now to start.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are not competing with that, and their next 3 years they're getting a 23% pay raise, if we're not at least competing with that, we're going to be behind the eight ball.
And the FRS thing's a big factor because
because
their retirement was weaker than ours.
It was a local pension.
Yeah.
And now that it's FRS, that means the deputies here could go work there and transfer their retirement would go with them. Before it was a different retirement, so it wouldn't transfer.
And I think theirs at one time, all of Duval County was way behind in paying into what that retirement was.
Yes.
I think it took them years to
the city was
during the recession. They didn't pay anything at all, and it almost bankrupted the city. Now you've worked for 3 separate sheriffs.
I have.
So can you give me one component that you can take from each of those 3 that would make you a better sheriff?
Well, I tell you, Sheriff Perry, he made our agency a professional agency. In 1991, he actually got our national accreditation for the first time. We were nationally accredited in 1991, and we've maintained that all the way till current. And when you have a more professional agency, you start having people that stay here longer and retire. Under Sheriff Shore, he put a focus and a value on education. And he put it to where, you know what, if you want to be a sergeant, you have to have a 2-year degree. If you want to be a lieutenant, you have to have a 4-year degree. And it got competitive, of course, to where basically now if you want to be a sergeant, you almost have to have a master's degree. And a more educated workforce, you're going to have better solutions. And when you have better solutions, you're going to be more effective and more efficient, and hopefully better cost-effective measures in your workforce to be, when you start talking about the budget, you're going to be more effective.
Now I can tell you, I really enjoyed my time when I was a citizen that sat on the sergeant's board. I don't
know if you were on mine or not. I went up 5 times. I was a slow learner.
I think I was on one of yours. But the way that those boards work, to me, I always was so impressed with. And I don't know if they still do it that way or not anymore. But what they would do is they'd have one citizen and then 4 people within the organization, a deputy, and then a couple supervisors. And they would put them through the programs, and you literally sat it was almost like an interrogation.
It was.
And I felt horrible for the guys, just grilling them. But I can tell you, if you survived it, you deserved the job. And it was quite an interesting situation with that. And did they have that when you went to lieutenant? I know I used to sit on the sergeant board. So
for the lieutenant also.
Yeah.
I was a slow learner there too. It took me 5 times.
There you go.
So, but it builds character. A lot of times, even Sheriff Perry, even Sheriff Shore says, you don't look at the person that gets promoted off the board. Mm-hmm. You look at the people that don't. How are they going to take that? You learn more from your failures than you do your successes.
100%.
And I failed 5 times before I got promoted, twice, one for sergeant and one for lieutenant. And those are, it's a bump in the road. And how are you going to recover from that? And because it hurts. You study, you stay up studying, and everything you've done to get there, to be qualified, to even go before the board. Now it's an assessment center. So you take your test and then you go in an assessment center, and you have several different scenarios that you go in and deal with, writing assignment, and then a couple of live scenarios where you deal with maybe an HR issue or something like that. So I've been a part of several sergeants boards as a person grilling. Mm-hmm. And of course I've been the grillee before. So seeing both sides of the equation, it's a great learning experience. And I think we got more out of our people, judging our people, than this current assessment center.
Mm-hmm. No, I was impressed by the program, and I can tell you, I looked at sergeants and lieutenants a little bit different when I met them out on the street, and I was like, okay, I know the fire you walk through.
Yeah. So. Well, the one I got promoted off of was the first time. It was a little different because I think the one you sat on was you had everybody asked questions. You just went down the road, the questions, and then I think you 2 or 3 times down, you ask a question, you got an answer, and then it goes to the next person. Well, the last time and the one time I got promoted to sergeant, it was basically a scenario question, and they just started asking you questions. Or no, I'm sorry, they just gave you information, and you had to respond to what information you were given. And it was shots fired at Prosperity Bank building on US 1 South. And of course, you're the sergeant. So you say, well, I'm going to send 2 units down there, of course. But it was the security guard shot at the people that just robbed the bank. So we're like, okay, well, we need to go secure the crime scene. And, you walk through everything. You say that. And then you're sitting there, you're waiting for the next piece of information. And then they would say the next piece of information. The next person would say your next piece of information. Then you would respond to that. And the next one is, hey, your unit's behind the suspect vehicle and they're in pursuit. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to divert a unit and make sure that I'm still send somebody over there to secure the scene. And now we have a pursuit. And as policy says, I'm going to go wherever the pursuit ends. It's like, okay, I'm handling this. No big deal. Well, it evolved into the guy pits the car. It spins out into Chick-fil-A on a Saturday or on a Friday afternoon or something. I forget what the day was.
It couldn't be Sunday.
Yeah. So it spins out. Of course, you have a mass casualty event. You have to set up your ICS standards. One guy gets out with a gun and runs this way. One guy gets out with a gun and runs this way. So you have to, okay, now I need to send people to chase that guy. I need to send people to chase that guy. I have to deal with the mass casualty. I have to make sure that the scene's secure. So all of these things you have to keep going back through. And that's what I got promoted off of because I did the best on that board and scored the highest. Well, fast forward to now I'm a sergeant and we had a armed robbery down at US 1 in Wildwood. We got the car, was coming right at us. We chased it. We did the pit maneuver. The guy tried to throw the gun out the window. It ended up shooting the driver. We pitted the car. It went into a driveway of a deputy that lived there. So they get out, they run in the woods. They threw a girl out and then while they were pursuing, one guy ran into a tree and split his head open. The guy that was shot ran off in the woods and laid down. One guy said he had chest pains. They transported him to the ER. Then he tried to escape from the ER. The dogs found him. So, I mean, it was all of these things going on. And my relief came up and says, well, at least we got the guy that scored the best on the test for this one to run it. So, those scenarios, I think, were the best where you selecting.
And that goes back to your training component.
Absolutely.
Of doing
absolutely.
One of the questions, crime trends. What are you seeing as crime trends? I know you've been retired since the first year, but what were the crime trends that you were seeing? What were the things that were concerning you as a member of the Sheriff's Department?
Well, the burglaries to the vehicle are always a concern, and they're the same kind of vehicle. Always the same kind of vehicle.
The unlocked one?
Unlocked. So, crime.
With a sign that says "Rob me."
Right, and here's all of my goods here on the seat, ready for you to take. But that's a concern, and the good thing about St. John's is we don't have the violent crime. We do have a rise in violent crime right now, but we don't have the overwhelming violent crime that we're having to combat. So we're able to focus more on the neighborhood patrols to make sure people are visible. But right now we're not doing it. And I think we need to be more active. We need to be more visible. We got a community down in Summerhaven down there that they have a problem with a community or a county parking lot being built that's right by the ocean, that there's no access to the ocean, and they're going to build a parking lot there and allow people to park, but they want to go to the beach, but there's no access to the beach. There's no facilities there. There's no trash receptacles there.
Is this a federal government project?
No, it's a county problem.
Not mine.
Yes.
So we're actually building a problem, and now the sheriff's office is going to be responding down there to deal with the landowners and the beachgoers, because we're building a problem, and those are the things that we're going to be dealing with. So those more of the neighborhoods and things like that, and the number one complaint in St. Johns County, I bet y'all both can name it. Even Amanda, you can probably name it.
Parking.
Traffic.
Yeah. They go together. So, what you're saying with that, and sometimes I would, when we were doing designs at that time, we made sure we went through what was called CPTED, crime through
environmental design.
Yeah, environmental design, and for crime prevention also. How would you improve that relationship so that the scenario, it doesn't happen on your watch?
Yes, I spent 5 years in the crime prevention unit with the sheriff's office as a sergeant over that when I was working in the office of the sheriff. And we sent all of my crime prevention deputies to the CPTED program, and the lighting and how you put your bushes out there and designing it the right way. And that actually leads into when we build a new school, how about having a deputy sheriff in that meeting? So when you build a school, you don't end up like Hartley, where we have a lady that's now starting to call in. Day one, she's already called in complaining about the parents dropping off the kids. It's like, well, you knew there was a school there when you bought your house. So if we had a deputy in that conversation, at least maybe we could say, hey, this is going to be a traffic problem. Can we at least try to mitigate it now instead of it's going to be the sheriff's problem as soon as it's built and there's cars lined up in front of it? So can we try to at least minimize that so the deputies and the people that live there, we can try to ease the pain a little bit before we even build it? And that's something that I would like to do is get law enforcement and the fire rescue actually involved ahead of time. So.
Yeah, I think that as a contractor, that's a huge thing. We're always asking, well, what's the end user want to do with it?
Right.
And sometimes the design people are not the end user, but boy, they can design it.
They can, and they look beautiful.
And then they leave, and then the end user has to deal with whatever is left over.
Well, Mike and I were on a project today, and I looked at something and went, oh, this is not good, and Mike, I left Mike with the problem. Mike's got to go back to the engineers and go, okay, we don't think this is going to work. Yeah. Please tell us how it's going to work. Mm-hmm. I still don't think it's going to work no matter what their answer is, but I'm sure that happens in law enforcement also. One of the questions, because of the growing population we have here, and that means you're growing at the same level, how do you maintain the same quality of officer when, if you expand the NFL right now, the NFL is going to get weaker. Mm-hmm. If you had 4 teams, the NFL is going to get weaker as far as talent. So the talent level. So how do you keep that gap from happening? Because, it only takes one bad officer out there to make the entire department look bad.
Absolutely.
So how do you control that with the growing population and you're not getting the same quality of cadets?
Well, I tell you, it starts with training. Mm-hmm. Our FTO program does a great job. I think that it starts with them. When we get new people in, we have to maintain a standard here. And we do a great job with that, but it starts with that. So we have to do something. And I think our salaries and our benefits package, we have to have the environment that they want to come to. Once we get that straight, and then when we get them here, train them the right way. We've had problems with, especially in communications, where we have people leave because they don't feel like they're being treated like a person. Just because they're in training doesn't mean you talk down to them and treat them bad. They're learning. You have to treat them, they're learning. You don't talk to them bad just because they're learning. Mm-hmm. They don't know. That's why you're there as a trainer. You have to be compassionate. You have to have that empathy because you were there one time learning what to do. So we have to show that compassion and empathy when we're training them, and that will make them still want to stay here.
And I have experience. My roommate was a trainer. Chuck Griffin was a trainer, and he'd come home and he'd go, "Oh gosh, what's going on with you?" But he'd get him there, and so when you see that happening as a trainer, is it just patience or what? Because I can tell you this as a coach, I've always been able to cut the guy.
Right. But you think about when you get them as a new deputy at the sheriff's office, think about all the training that they go through just to sit in your car. Mm-hmm. They've gone through the academy, they've taken all the tests, then they passed the state test, then they've gone through the hiring process, then they get there and they've gone through all of the classroom that we teach them, all of the firearms training, just to be able to sit in the car and start trying to do the job. Mm-hmm. And then if you're like, well, you don't know what you're doing, let's get rid of them. Mm-hmm. It's like you're not even giving them a fair shake. Mm-hmm. You got to give them that. Now, if you get somebody from another agency, we have to treat them a little different. They're going to have maybe some bad habits, or it's not necessarily bad habits, but they're going to have different habits. Mm-hmm. And that's where we have to say, hey, how about doing it this way? Because it's a little more efficient here if you did it this way here. So.
Violent crime. We talked about a little bit. Mm-hmm. My impression of St. Johns County has always been we've been blessed that we have not lived in an area with a lot of violent crime. Fortunately, the last few years we've had some pretty violent crimes. Mm-hmm. One in particular that we all dealt with a few years ago. But how do you address that? What do you see the trend in that being? And can St. Johns County continue to be that area that, while we have crime, we hopefully don't have to deal with some of those?
Well, most of our violent crime comes from out of town. Mm-hmm. They come from either down south or from up north. And if we're able to show a presence up north, like in Ponte Vedra, we need to have more deputies in Ponte Vedra. Mm-hmm. Because, they just had the basically the run and gun battle when they had that murder up there in Jack's Beach not too long ago. We need to have more deputies up there to where we show when they come across the county line, there's like, there's too many cops here. I need to go back the other way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to, have a show of a force up there to where, we have more deputies readily available to show them, hey, this is not the place you need to come. And same thing over in Fruit Cove. We have so many people that have just moved in, especially with Nocatee right there off US 1. We need to have people that are in that area to where if you're coming down from Jacksonville or wherever you're coming from, when you pass through here, you know that this is not the place that you're going to choose to commit your violent crime. And that goes along with one thing that I do really want to hit on is 95. We have the deadliest stretch of 95 in the nation. And that's one of the things that I want to key in on. And as soon as I get elected is we have to do something. We have lost 18 people since 2021, and we've done nothing extra to fix it. I know that FHP has jurisdiction out there, but, the Constitution of Florida gives the sheriff the ultimate responsibility of what happens in this jurisdiction. And it's our responsibility as a sheriff. So we need to take responsibility and do something about it. And I will take responsibility and do something about that.
All right. I know you guys are broken up into zones and some of those things. And can you give us a description of how those zones work? Mm-hmm. And if do they rotate who's working in which zones, or are you pretty much there for your time there?
Yeah,
how do those zones work? Because I know there are zones, but I don't know how they work.
Well, so right now there's actually a region plan. I don't think they've changed it since I've left. But they have 3 regions, the north, central, south. Each region is run by a captain. They have 4 lieutenants in each region. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta shifts, and the shift lieutenant rotates with them. So you have 3 lieutenants out. If everybody's full, you have 3 lieutenants out. So you have a lieutenant in each region. And then in each region, you have 2 sergeants, east and a west. Mm-hmm. And under them, they have corporals and then deputies. So they stay in that area unless we're short in another area, if somebody's sick or something, if they're short vacations or whatever, the lieutenant can move them back and forth. We don't like to go across region lines. Of course, you don't want to have somebody north having to work south because of maybe where they live or anything like that. But they usually stay in the same area because they get to know the people there. It's more efficient. And unless they want to change, then of course they can. But that's mainly in patrol. That's how this operated.
So there's always a lieutenant. There's always 2 sergeants. Yeah. Normally, a normal scenario, there's always a lieutenant. There's always 2 sergeants.
Well, not always, because people got to take a day off if they're sick or whatever. Vacations. You have the corporal. If the sergeant's gone, the corporal will run the shift. Mm-hmm. And if a lieutenant's gone, then if the central will cover south or the central will cover north, or vice versa, any combination, you will always have 2 lieutenants out.
So when they talk about it, you need to call your DSL. That would be your corporal or your sergeant at that time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
What's a DSL?
Shift leader.
Yeah, it's called different things now, but it's basically the guy in charge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Deputy shift leader. That's just what it was. I think that was what the acronym was.
Okay. So. All right.
He's trying to throw some lingo out there.
I still have some government acronyms left in me.
That's good. That's good.
Left in me.
We got about 10 minutes, right? So,
Yes, sir.
Kind of the only other question I had on here was mental health issues. You talked a little bit about budgeting earlier. I think that's one of the biggest things that our first responders are dealing with right now. So, how would you handle that, and how would you address that differently than it's being handled now?
As far as like internally or externally? Internally, like I said, we need to get the funding like the fire rescue got from our county commissioners. We have a license. I think she's still there, but we have a licensed mental health. I'm not sure what exactly her title is, but we have one there that deputies can go talk to. The problem is there's a stigmatism. She's not a cop, and cops don't trust not cops to talk about those things. There is a peer-to-peer counseling group, and I think that is really good. That has worked out good. I've reached out to a couple of people, and I'm not on that team, but when I hear somebody that's gone through something, I want to make sure they're okay. I've been through my share of tragic events and know how it hits you and how it can affect you, and I want to make sure that they know that there's somebody out there to talk. I know Putnam just had a shooting the other day, and of course I reached out to Captain Randy Hayes, which he was actually involved in something where he was shot and pretty bad, and I reached out to him because he was the captain. I said, hey, if your guys need somebody to talk to that's been involved in that, I said, I've been there, let me know if they need some help. I'd be happy to work through it with them. We've had several officer involved shootings here, and we don't have any kind of a group talk with them. We send them to the doctor up in Jacksonville. We send them to them, and it's like, hey, how you feeling? Tell them what you're thinking. Okay, you're good to go back to work. But we don't have any follow-up, and I think in my situation, my wife didn't know how to act around me, and that was very touching for me because I didn't want her to feel like that. I didn't know how she was feeling. So and she's in law enforcement. I mean, she's a deputy. Next year she'll hit her 20-year mark. So when I get in there, I want to have that group that has been involved to talk every so often. That's probably the most tragic event, and that's not saying that all the other things that we go through are not tragic, but that's one thing that they'll have to carry with them. And I want to make sure those people, it's not affecting them and their mental health throughout their career, because it can come back and affect you. And I want to make sure that they're taken care of, because I can speak to that.
And unfortunately, we lost a deputy because of a health issue just a couple of years ago. Two-part question. What do we do as far as physically making sure that they're healthy enough to be on the road and not endangering themselves? And secondly, do we have a mental component that almost you have to go through and go, okay, I have to get here? And then do we have those two in place, and how can we improve them if they are in place?
Now, we have a physical agility that we do to make sure that you can physically do the job. But when we did the life scan, it used to come around and we would do the life scan. I would like to see that come back. And that is something that I think we could, as we're negotiating in the insurance committee meeting, maybe we can say, hey, if we're doing a life scan and we can see that our deputies are healthy, can we get a cheaper rate? If we're saying, hey, our deputies, if we give them time on duty to go work out 3 times a week, can we lower our insurance rates? Can we do things like that to make sure that our deputies are healthier, one, and can we make it more cost effective for all of our employees, which is countywide, not just the sheriff's office, because that insurance committee is all the constitutional officers. And that would benefit the entire county, not just the sheriff's office. Those are the things I would like to see.
On the mental health side, is there a criteria that, every quarter you have to go sit down with somebody?
We do have it for our ICAC detectives, for our victim advocates. When I was in charge of victim advocates, we were able to implement that for them, because we had a victim advocate that 3 different days in a year, she had to go to 3 suicides. in a day, 3 different days in a single year. And that is a lot of mental stress to try to be there for somebody that just lost a loved one tragically like that, 3 in one day. And, I actually had a victim advocate, and she's still working there, but she's not a victim advocate anymore. But 2 Mother's Days in a row out there on Volano, the mother saw their child drowned. And that really hit her, and we were able to get, that is what really said we need to get them in that rotation of making sure they're okay, because that everywhere you go, somebody has got a tragic event that just happened. Deputies go to things that everything is not tragic, but everything the victim advocates go to, something tragic has just happened.
And they do amazing work.
Yes.
I want to circle back.
Okay.
Very beginning, you mentioned bomb squad and the SWAT team.
Yep.
You said before we sat down that you have been in law enforcement since the late 1900s.
Yeah.
So what was the equipment like in the early days of the SWAT and the bomb squad versus what it's like today? Do you look at the stuff today and go, we never had that?
Well, I tell you, when I first got on the SWAT team, and this is no joke, I had a heavy, what they call a heavy vest that would take heavier round if you were shot with it, which I wouldn't want to get shot with a heavier round, but I had to duct tape because the zipper was broken. I had to duct tape it around me to stay shut.
Yeah.
And the helmet was like, you almost broke your neck if you moved too much because it was so heavy. Now they got these helmets that are almost like little Gucci helmets. They're so light. I mean, it's almost like having a little beanie on your head. And I mean, the vests are so light, you could stand there for hours, and it's like almost like
probably more reliable too.
Oh, I'm telling you, the ceramics. Oh yeah, they're great. But when I got on the SWAT team, I had to buy all of my gear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had to buy my low ride holster. If you want that, you got to buy that. It's like now they just give them everything. It's like, well, that's really cool that they get everything. But the bomb robot, actually, in 2005, we actually got our first bomb robot, and we went up to.
Then you hired a 15-year-old to run it.
No, I ran it. I actually ran it, and one of the things that I had to do is pick up a coin off the floor with it before you'd get certified, and I mean all kinds of things you had to do with it to certify it. Then you had to tear it all the way down and then rebuild it before you were certified to bring it home. So Kerry Tanner, which was the sergeant in charge of the bomb squad, we went up to Tennessee and picked it up. It was a subsidiary of Grumman, Remote Tech. And now they still have that same robot, and we desperately need a new one. But it's, again, $400,000, I think, for a new one. But that thing right there is what we found the pipe bombs up in Julington Creek. When I think it was Sergeant Teresa Mears, I think it was one of her last days at work, they got a call that one of the pictures, that was one of the big pictures that you plug it in and it rotates to make it look like the water was moving. And it was delivered to a house and was like, hey, we didn't order that. And the deputy looked into the little hole on it and saw what he thought were pipe bombs. So they call us out there, and I use the robot, and we disrupt it with a clay round. So when it goes in there, it forces it open, but it doesn't penetrate anything. And I flipped it over, and 3 pipe bombs roll out. And the bomb squad, Kerry, says, hey, we need a bigger perimeter. I'm like, well, he's never said that before. And we ended up trying to take a steel round and knock off the end of the pipe bomb, off the cap, off the end of it, and it ended up going high ordnance, which means it blew up. And the news was filming it as it blew up. So I have that picture at home where it was blowing up right in front of that robot. And thank goodness we have that robot, because if not, that could have been a bomb tech down there. That's why that robot is so important and why we need to spend that money. And so, those kinds of toys, we didn't have them back when I started, but now they got drones and really good robots, little throw robots. You just throw it in there and play with the joystick and drive it around the house to make sure the house is clear, and pole cams and everything else. And it's just, the technology is great.
Just want you to know that if Troy had been there and I was trying to use the robot, he'd have super glued that coin down to the floor just to see how hard
he would have never got it.
No.
Yeah.
Hey, we're coming to an end, Jim. Anything we missed that you want to talk about? We have about 2 minutes left that we didn't get a chance to talk about.
No, we've talked about so much, but I'm running because I want to take care of the deputies. That they are first, and we have to be able to take care of our workforce, because if we don't have a workforce, we're not going to have public safety. And that's my biggest goal, is to make sure the deputies are taken care of. I want to provide a safe working environment to where everybody at that sheriff's office, not just the gun toters, but everybody feels safe in an environment where they can come and be productive and have a good wage and benefit package to go home and take care of their family. That's what I'm all about.
Well, and I want to thank you for coming in. We talked a little bit before the show. Running for office is not easy.
No, sir.
It's one of the hardest things you ever have to do. And we appreciate you running.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate you taking the time. And Amanda, do you have anything else?
I would just highly encourage you. Some of our viewers have asked questions in the comments. If you wouldn't mind taking the time to scrolling through and answering those after we get off the air, that would be fantastic.
Sure.
Thank you for coming in.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Jim, thank you. Good luck.
Yes, sir.
It is great to meet you. Thanks for not having a love fest here.
Well, I mean, I put up with you all the time.
Thanks for being here, Troy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is I almost said uncommon
You almost
ground.
said uncommon ground.
This is St. Augustine this evening with Mike and Mike Davis, Amanda Troy, Jim Priester, candidate for sheriff, and we will have another guest on tomorrow, Rob Hardwick. So come join us tomorrow, and we'll hope to get some voter information.
Absolutely. Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye, guys.